to the Relentless CEO Podcast. Relentless! With Adam Kifer. Follow your path to success alongside icons and industry leaders in martial arts, fitness, and more. Let's go. This is the Relentless CEO Podcast.
Good to have you on the show, man.
Thank you.
Different background, different studio today, changing up. I like it.
How'd that happen?
Well, your generosity, of course, having us out here.
Are we in a boxing ring? Are we in a zoo?
There's going to be like a squirrel with the face of a dragon or something, right, Leah?
That's
she
AI.
She hates when I do this.
Well, that's the beauty of it, man. Like AI is a big part of our process. And so we'll use that to get results that our clients want. And so, in this studio, people can't see it, but it's a blue screen background. And we can put anything. I mean, it's incredible the time that we're in. Like 2024 is unbelievable.
And I was going to ask you, what are some AI, or what are some ways that you guys are using AI? Like we use Opus Pro and like some stuff like that, but I'm sure you guys are way ahead.
I would not use Opus. So start there.
So we're not going to use Opus Pro anymore.
If you want to, I mean, it's incredible because, oh, hey, you were inside. All right, how about that? For those watching, I have a cat, and the cat wanders around the studio. She'll probably jump up here. It's very funny. But AI is incredible because it is the sum of all of its programming, but it's definitely a far cry from being consumable.
Sure.
And that's even if I get ads all the time, right? When I'm on Instagram, and it's very obvious to me in a second. I'm like, oh, this is an AI voice. Because of the inflections or whatever, it doesn't matter if it's the best products. I don't care. I don't want that ad.
Yeah.
And so the leveraging in AI, like there are use cases for it. Automations, if you have co-pilots, agents that have like a certain process and they kind of replace Zapier or whatever. For us, like we use it for image generation, for ideating, and for just open dialogue on, hey, this is what we're approaching. When you sit down and you plan something out, and you get a room full of people, it's the equivalent of being able to say, hey, I'm trying to prompt this AI to get the wheels turning. But then from there, like a lot of people just stop there and they go, okay, well, great. That's the idea the AI gave me and I'm going to roll with that. It's like that should be a springboard. It's a tool for you as a human with all of your brilliance and luminance and insights to then go, okay, great. Thank you, robot. And then do your own thing out of that. And that's where a lot of people don't do that. I think it's part of what's given us a unique edge.
Yeah, I love that. We use it for image generation a lot. And then again, like you said, like just coming up with brainstorming ideas and stuff. And I feel like AI is not quite there yet, but it's enough to give you like the little spark to your fire to come up with more, right? Hey, Relentless Nation, what is up? If you've been listening to this podcast, you know I never sell anything on this podcast. We don't even have sponsors for our podcast because I want it to be about giving you value. That's going to change for this episode and for the next few because we have the most important event in the history of the martial arts industry coming up, the Relentless Membership Summit in Chandler, Arizona. This is an event that every martial arts school that wants to level up and push the boundaries of what they can do and the impact they can make should be at, because you're not only going to be around industry experts in business, marketing, instruction, athlete development, but you're also going to be around people from outside the industry that have scaled success at levels we've never even seen at our industry. For example, one speaker alone has over $100 million in sales. Another speaker was the video director for MrBeast, the 245 million subscriber YouTube channel. And then we have industry staples like myself and Dave Kovar and Jody Tension and Kelly Murray. We are bringing you guys the best of the best to help you guys get to the next level. And I will promise you this will be unlike any other martial arts event you've ever been to in the best ways possible. Our speakers are accessible. You can come up and talk to me in between sessions. You can come network with us at the networking party. And we like to go all out with our entertainment. We're bringing you guys some of the best stand-up comedians as well to perform at this. So you guys are going to have fun. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to level up. And you're more importantly going to get to go home and make a massive impact in your community as a result. Tickets are on sale now. Get them before they've gone. We've sold out the last 3 years. RelentlessSummit.com is where you can grab your ticket. And I hope to see you at the summit. Now back to the podcast. I have to ask you a question that my 9-year-old wants me to ask you. He's like, Dad, can you ask him, how did he work for MrBeast? How did he meet him? How did that happen? So I have to ask that question.
Of course. It's pretty wild. I mean, so I've been in YouTube for a while. Like circa 2012. Everybody was thinking, okay, I think YouTube has peaked because a lot of people had had success And they were like, wow, look at that video got 5 million views. That's crazy, man. That's 5 million people watching that, right? And that was that area. And everyone's like, we're kind of done. Like, we've figured it out. We've hit the ceiling. And for what it's worth, I actually feel podcasting is in that same place right now. So we're on this order of magnitude shift that's about to happen. But one of the first creators I ever worked with, his name was Stuart Edge. So he did these larger than life spectacles. He did like the Goofy movie in person and like magic and street music, whatever. And so I went with him to New York, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Because I was working in pest control. I was doing door-to-door sales. Hated that.
Slight upgrade.
A little bit. I hated it. And it's like, if a solicitor's in your neighborhood, that guy's public enemy number one.
Sure.
No one wants the solicitor, and that was my job for 5 years. That's how I paid for school. And so when the summer season wasn't there, I was doing marketing, and I was slowly learning video production from a guy there. And I was watching YouTube, and I was obsessed with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, like Logan Paul and David Dobrik, I would love to live in a content house, because they were starting to do that. The money wheel was turning in 2017, 2016. It's like, you can put videos on YouTube, and if you do enough of them and you aggregate enough views and attention, YouTube will pay you. It was the craziest idea. And so I would watch that as a fan, just like pining over. It's like, gosh, how cool would that be? Then the opportunity came. My story is big around taking an opportunity that scares you, or doing something that's terrifying, that you have no guarantee that it's going to work out. So I took all the days off that I had left for the year at my pest control company. And I heard about this conference called Vid Summit. And Vid Summit's this big conference now. I think they're going in their 11th year. And I know all the owners. And I was like, man, like that's where Sean Duras is, which is this big Utah creator. And I was such a fan. And I was like, because I'm from Utah, right? I'm like, this is so cool. Like, there's someone in Utah making these outrageous videos. And his whole thing was like cereal and skateboards. And I was like, this is awesome. He's going to be there. So I took all the days off left that I had, and I drove to Los Angeles overnight. I showed up. I had no money. And I was like, can I volunteer to work? And so they gave me a volunteer shirt.
That's awesome.
In 2017. And I was just like, I'm here. I drove here. Like, can I work here? I can't afford the conference. And so they let me. And so I networked, and I got to meet Sean Duras and Sean Holiday from Space Station. And the synergy in, hey, we're both in Utah and we love video and we appreciate YouTube. Let's meet up when we get back. So we did. And one thing led to another. We went out to lunch. They manage a creator named Tanner Fox. So Tanner Fox, he's like 24 now, but at the time he was 18, and he had probably 9 million subscribers. He was a kid that made scooter videos. And so it's like, in YouTube, the vast catalog of all things YouTube, there really weren't a lot of scooter videos in like 2014.
No, I wouldn't even think of that as like a niche.
It wasn't at all. Now it's pretty cool. It's like way rad to be a scooter kid, right? But back then it was random. Like, who's making scooter videos? So they were like, yeah, Tanner Fox is on our roster. We take care of his edits. He needs an adult in the house, because this kid is 18 years old. He's probably got $10 million. He's got a garage full of supercars in this like mansion, and it's just him and his homies, and they're all 18. And so it's like, we need someone there to live with him.
Babysit.
Yeah, babysit. And I was like, no way. Like, because I watched his videos. I'm like, is this real? And so I was like, yeah, I felt like I got my letter to Hogwarts. It was amazing. I was like, okay, wow. Yeah, let me move to California. So I moved to California. I moved into this kid's house, and I edited his channel for about a year. And our posting schedule was every other day. So that means I would work with him and the other 4 guys in the house, and we would create these videos. And then I would stay up the entire night and edit them and deploy it the next day, and then lather, rinse, repeat. It was nonstop.
Just up all night editing?
All night. Every single edit was an all-nighter.
Was at any point in that process where you're just like, screw this is too much work? Or
every
were
day.
You just, okay.
It was every day. But it was cool, because then like I would meet the FaZe clan, or like Logan Paul or Jake Paul, and we had all these Lamborghinis that pulled into our driveway, and we're doing donuts, and it was so loud that the local PD deployed a helicopter. But we're in a neighborhood with no HOA, so they couldn't do anything. And also we're in Temecula, and they kind of like having a big influencer. So they're like, we're not going to, bust them. So it was like, it was so on the verge of like, I cannot survive another day. And also, this is the coolest thing I've ever done in my life, And so it just kind of the juxtaposition of that, I just navigated the middle of it for about a year. At the end of that, I had kind of made my name in the space, and the guys at Vid Summit, Daryl Eves, he produces The Chosen, which is this huge, Christian show about the life of Jesus Christ. And so he produced Vid Summit. And so I got to know him pretty well through Space Station and Sean Duras and Sean Holiday. He called me up out of the blue when I was done with Tanner Fox. And he's like, hey, man, you ever heard of MrBeast? And I was like, yeah, of course. One of our videos blew up because people thought it was a MrBeast video. Like, it was our most viral video, and people thought it was a Beast video. And then we had this overlap where we did this influencer airsoft battle. And so we kind of touch base. And he goes, Beast has hired me to basically get in and structure their entity because they're at 25 million subscribers right now. And they blew up way faster than they expected. And they need an HR department, and they need content game plan. They need like business stuff, you know?
Makes sense.
And so I'm going to go out there for a year. Their camera team could use a leader. I think you should be that guy. I was like, no way, dude. Like, I've seen their videos. Like, I wouldn't know how to do that. But I jumped on the opportunity the second I got it. So I moved out to North Carolina, and I was there for about 2 years. And it was crazy because I was there about 4 months go by, COVID hits. And so suddenly we have to navigate the most complex, insane YouTube channel with the most insane stunts at a scale that no one has ever done before. That's the point. And we have to do it while doing nose swabs. It was insane. So yeah, that is a long story to how I got to MrBeast.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I'm sure COVID was probably a good time for viewership since everyone was at home, with nothing to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is awesome. But yeah, I love your story because I think the fact that you just grinded it out while you were young, and I think people overlook that a lot. They just see sort of the end result and don't hear the story of like you staying up late all these nights doing it over and over again, wondering if this is a thing or not. But it's cool to hear how you sort of grew into that. Now you have your own thing that you're doing with Biggest Agency, which is awesome. And my question for you is, our audience, we got a lot of small business owners, fitness and martial arts school owners. And I think when it comes to content creation, they don't place as much importance on it because they're in their brain, they're like, I'm not going to see immediate results from putting a piece of content out, so why bother doing it? What's some advice that you would give to them if they're sort of in that thought pattern?
That's a great question, man. Be funny.
Yeah.
We talked about this right before we started filming. Like, when I am on my phone, I kind of don't want to be. I think everybody relates to that. We all have phones, and we'll do it as kind of this reprise, like, I'm going to cut away from reality. I'm going to get into my phone. And then the second that happens, I'm not really stoked on that either. But if I'm going to be on my phone and I'm going to watch something, I want it to either be the most mind-blowing, revelatory thing. I want it to either be about foreign policy or something I'm very interested in, or I want it to be funny. And odds are you don't understand foreign policy the way I do. It's a whole thing. But if you can make your content funny, you have a much higher chance of holding my attention. And the cool thing is like, oh, okay, great. So I'm supposed to be a comedian now on top of a business owner, but you can do a group meeting and have a sounding board of people, but it's not obvious to me that any of them are going to be funny. Well, congratulations. You can tell AI, hey, I want you to be the foremost expert in comedy. And now I own a karate dojo, and I want to, and I'm going to talk about this at the event and go more in detail. But I want to come up with some short form content. Here are the parameters of my operation. Here are the people that I have. This person he's clearly the funniest one. This person's not, but we like to pick on him. So I would like you to come up with 5 ideas for me to film today that are going to be funny and humorous. And what's the punchline? And so it's like, you can do that and then look across the 5 ideas, and 4 of them are duds, but one of them's amazing. And so it's like, if you're doing, all it is just looking ahead. Where is the puck going? Where's the wind blowing? And if you can say, I'm taking some time to plan this, then you're going to be further ahead than most other people. See, people are happy to get like a number on the board. I'm either not creating content, this is 0, or I'm creating content, and that's a 1. And so people are so much happier with being able to show results, say I'm making something. Like, I got the 1 on the board. But like, there are people that play this game, it's their full-time gig, and so you're up against a level 9. And so you have to have a little bit of forethought and consideration leading into that moment. Like, what am I gonna do when I make this piece of content? I had a client, and he's telling me, he's like, yeah, we're just producing content. And I was like, why? He goes, I don't know. It's like, I have no idea. I'm supposed to.
Sure.
So there's this shared sentiment around, I'm supposed to be doing this because it's 2024 and I have a phone. And everybody's addicted to this thing, this mind-sucking NSA soul-mapping device, but everybody's on it, so there has to be a strategy. And so you're going up against the best pieces of content. So the more planning you can put into it, or a little bit of forethought, it's going to perform exponentially better than if you don't.
That makes total sense. And I think some of them get stuck because maybe they see how much good content is on there and they're just like, MrBeast just spent $25 million on that video. How am I going to compete with that type of thing?
Yeah.
But no, I love the AI idea. In fact, let's take that and run with it.
It's great. It's low hanging fruit, man. Like that. And, you know, don't use one AI system either. You know, everyone's going to have different views on this, but for me, I find it very bizarre that AI is programmed with bias.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So like when Gemini rolled out, everyone knows this story.
Yep.
You say, generate me an image of the founding fathers, and it was a diverse group of women. Which is bananas. That's just not true. That has no political or bias in any way. That's just fundamentally not a thing. And so for me, like I have a real concern with AI systems, as sophisticated as they are, being programmed with bias. And I think that's a really interesting thing that we're going to have to navigate over, because content is going to get better and it's going to implement AI constantly.
Sure.
And so there has to be some responsibility to that. But beyond that, like there has to be a good use case for it. There has to be like a responsibility, but also like there has to be something clever that comes from the use of it. And if you can use those systems and then generate crap. But if you're generating something, there's going to be so much AI generated content. People are going to long for the human touch.
Yeah, I agree.
It's going to be inevitable that people are like, I'm so sick of this. And it's going to get so good. It's like, oh, this is clearly passing now as human, but I can tell that there's something wrong with it. So everybody's in an opportunity right now to find themselves, to find their voice, to find the thing that they're exceptional at, and then start producing content. And you have to bang your head against a wall for like 500 videos, because it's not obvious to you what it is that everybody's going to want to see. But then after like 500 videos of failure, you're going to figure it out, you know?
Yeah, it's interesting with AI, like even with copywriting, we can see like when it's generated, because if it starts to unlock or unleash, I'm like, that's ChatGPT all the way. That's like the two favorite terms from there. Or you see people copy and pasting and the build doesn't transfer, so there's asterisks.
Dive in.
Yes.
Like, oh my gosh, no one says that.
Yeah, so I think there's different layers of usage with AI, with the people, like the copy and paste people that are just like, oh, good enough, copy paste, put it out there, and then you can tell. And then people like you who are like, all right, let's get as many iterations of this as possible. Let's dive deep to put out something really, really different and unique. When it comes to YouTube, our industry is like non-existent. What are some tips you have for someone just starting off on YouTube that's like, I'm just trying to get my channel growing, I'm trying to gain followers? Like what tips would you give them?
What is that that one creator? It's like it's old at this point, but the guy wore like red karate robes.
Master Ken?
Yes. Hilarious.
We had him at the summit a couple of years ago.
No way.
Yeah, he was.
Did you
he
really?
was hilarious. Yes, he was so funny.
Oh my gosh, like him like kicking his buddy in the nuts like 1,000 times. So funny. So I mean the first thing we do when we get a client is we look at their immediate competitors. So we have like, we're working with Cardone Ventures, so one of Grant Cardone's companies. And the owners of them are like incredible business people with these wonderful minds. So who are their peer competitors? So we take an assessment of what it is that they're doing and why it's working. So the Hormozis are obvious matches, and they're actually really good friends with them. So them, Cody Sanchez, we want to understand people that are already going, that are already seeing success on YouTube. What is it that they're doing? That's the best place to start. What am I? I have a karate dojo. I have 100 people on the roster, and we're growing, or maybe we're an MMA gym and we're actually trying to get competitive and like get into like local cards and like have our guys really like climb the rosters. I was in Utah and we had showdown fights, and so I go to that every quarter, and I train in Muay Thai and MMA for 3 years off and on. And I was like, one day I'm gonna get in there. I'm gonna fight. Never did it, but you know, if a dojo is evaluating, what is your goal? So if you're clear on what it is you want, we want to be the most incredible studio in Arizona, in California, wherever. Okay, great. If you don't have a clear mission statement as a company, it's going to be difficult to navigate it as a YouTube channel, right? So let's say that you do. Let's say that you know exactly what you want as far as your company's growth. Beyond that, what does your channel offer that somebody else's channel doesn't? So once I know what it is that people in my space are doing, okay, there's the Ken guy, he's kicking his buddy in the nuts. There's a couple of other studios, they're doing like spectacles, like they've got these amazing dudes, they're doing triple flips and whatever. But like, what is your thing? And that seems like this kind of platitude. Like, what is your thing? You're like, oh, screw you. Like, what am I supposed to do with that?
Yeah.
But that's a real search of the soul, because if you can figure out what that is, you can start to pour it into, and you're not going to have it super crystal clear. Like, MrBeast used to be a gun channel.
I did not know that.
No one does.
It was a gun channel?
It was a gun. Initially, it was like Call of Duty reviews. That was when Jimmy was a young kid. And then someone came onto the show, and I don't know how to navigate in 2024. This person's family owned like a gun store, like had access to it. And so for like years, they would just get guns and then like go out in the woods and shoot it, because it's North Carolina. You can just do that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you're not going to necessarily, what your channel is starting as is probably not what it's going to be over time. And so it's okay to just do it and fail and fumble and feel like, oh my gosh, like what is the point to this? Because if you were consistent with it, you will figure it out along the way. Like you're starting as a white belt, right?
Sure.
If you hit yellow, congrats, you're now a little bit taking it seriously, right? Like knowing, then like by the time you're a brown belt, it's like this person understands the system, and they understand the discipline, and they're consistent, and they show up, and they understand their body in a different way now. And you can't expect black belt results when you're starting as a white belt.
Yeah.
But you have to go up in the ranks. Like you have to do that incrementally. And there's a lot of suffering, and there's a lot of putting your foot in your mouth, and there's a lot of like, it feels very thankless because you're making all this content and no one's receiving it. But if you are willing to take an inventory of what you've done so far, and let's say you had an outlier, let's say you had one video, like I looked at your YouTube channel, like you have one video that performed exceptionally well.
Yep.
And so it's
Tim
like,
Grover one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are the outlier cases there? Well, for one, Tim Grover's awesome.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I'm making an assessment of that. I had an all-star guest. And so just by his name alone, there was a lot of traction there. And then beyond that, like then you go, okay, well, what about it worked? I'm looking at the watch time analytics. I want to know when people got to my video because they were interested in Tim Grover, when did they click off? When did I lose them? And so from there, you can start to understand and kind of reverse engineer that process, like get in the shoes of the cold viewer and understand what happened when they got to your channel.
Yeah, I think I love that you point that out, because I think everyone, the only stats that they look at for people not familiar with YouTube is they're looking at views and subscribers and likes, and that's it.
Yes.
So watch time is another thing to watch. Any other KPIs that you're looking at as far as like, hey, this is how we determine if we're going in the right direction with content or not?
Good question. It's so funny. We just got a channel that has over 100,000 subscribers that we're managing. And they were doing a lot of external ads, and they were the other marketing agency they were working with like paid for bots. And so they had like all these bots subscribe, and they had all these like views that were being added by inauthentic channels. I have channels that now are like a obvious one is they're a wealth management company, and they have hundreds of millions of dollars in assets under management. And they've been doing YouTube videos for years talking about life insurance and wealth planning and things like that. Not sexy. Nothing about that's sexy. You know, that's not fun. Yeah. But we've been able to go in, and they have like a few hundred subscribers, and they're getting more views, they're getting more watch time, and their average view duration is literally bigger than the channel with 100,000 subscribers. And they have like 300.
Interesting.
So it's like the main things that we focus on is, like subscribers is a vanity metric that you can inflate.
Yep.
And views are a very ephemeral assessment of how well that video is doing. It's the watch time and the average view duration. And then traffic source is really important. So like if somebody's going to your video, do they watch it all the way through? Because if they did, you did something really remarkable. And YouTube notices that. Like first off, YouTube is incredible and creepy. And so is Google, and so is Instagram. Like people don't know this, but like your front-facing camera on your phone takes a photo of you every 4 seconds.
That's creepy.
And anytime you're on Instagram, and I'll tell you why I'm setting this up in a moment, when you're on Facebook, and they know that Adam responds to ads that have 60% yellow. So the majority of that image or that video has a lot of yellow in it. Or he likes this particular topic, but there's an XY graph that is basically mapped to where your eyes are looking. It is constantly scanning your eyes, your pupil dilation, and what you're specifically responding to. So they map all of this out. So Instagram, YouTube, they know you so well. And so if you're on a video, you're a little lab experiment. They're studying you. How did you get on that video? And you stayed on the video what did that channel do to keep you on our platform? See, that all they care about is session time. So if Adam leaves YouTube, we did something wrong.
It's interesting.
You were watching a video, whatever we recommended to you first, it did not map, and you click off that video. So we have another one ready because our algorithms told us we know what it is you're going to respond to probably next most. You know, it could be a Lex Friedman interview, it could be Matthew McConaughey, who knows. But if you can start to understand that the only goal of that platform is to keep session time, and you can help them do that, you're dating. And YouTube wants to know that you're dating and that you're consistent, you're going to show up with flowers, that you're going to try and get into their head and understand what they want. And if you can do that, the platform will love you. And a lot of times people just deploy content because they think it's good, but you're not thinking about what the platform wants. You don't have to game it. You can do all this stupid stuff. It's not going to last. But if you can just think about what the platform wants and what it is that people are arriving for, you'll grow. And there are like short-term hacks. Like right now on Instagram, I don't know why, but videos are going viral if they put in descriptions of supercars. I don't know if you've seen that. If you watch like a viral meme or something and you look at the description, a lot of it is like, ChatGPT, give me a full breakdown of the Cybertruck. And then they put that in the description, and for some reason it goes viral. No one knows why. So there's just these weird anomalous things that like the system hasn't accounted for that's working. Those are not that's not a growth strategy. There's someone right now that built their whole channel on tearing down MrBeast, right? So MrBeast has been kind of in the limelight lately. Yep. There's been a lot of controversy. And so someone's channel blew up. In a month, they had like 70,000 subscribers. And everybody goes, oh my gosh, I would love that. Well, you know what? People subscribe to you because your first video was, I'm going to show you in all the ways that MrBeast is a fraud and they fake their videos. It's like, well, now that's your channel, buddy.
Yep.
And you're going to lose subscribers as fast as you got them if you don't continue down that path, because that 70,000 people, they want to see.
They want some drama.
They want some drama.
Yep.
They want to see an amazing channel, which, by the way, it's an amazing channel. And I wish we fake stuff. That would have made my life easier. I wish we had fake stuff, but we didn't. And so it's like, that is not a lasting strategy.
Now, what do you and I were talking about podcasts before this, and I know you sort of said you feel like podcasts is getting to that like breaking point. What do you see the future of podcasts going?
Good question.
Obviously, it's heavily oversaturated right now.
It feels that way.
Yes.
But YouTube felt that way.
True.
It felt exactly like that in 2012.
Do you feel like the format of it is going to have to change to keep people interested in it more, or to gain attention?
That's a good
question. Because I feel like the format of most podcasts are pretty much the same. Or everyone's just trying to copy Rogan.
Well, we have perspective, and anyone listening to this probably has the perspective that time offers, which is a beautiful thing. Like I turned 33 this Saturday, and I remember. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's weird, man. 33, but I remember dial-up. You know, that weird sound, and I remember pre-internet, before all this crap, and at the time, television was king. So the only way to reach people was having a broadcast station. So you had to have all this elaborate equipment and a satellite truck, and you had to have a team, and that was your local news syndicate. And that was how it was done. And then they would basically serve your city. And then they would be like, okay, we know what the city's interested. Oh, it's crime. This person broke into this house, this car accident. If it reads, it bleeds, whatever. But now we've gotten all of those same tools, and the deployment is so much easier to do. So you can kind of think of it like I'm starting my own local broadcast station. That's a really good place to start, because then I can latch onto that. Like, oh, I grew up watching like broadcast news or local news. Okay, so you're kind of a local news station now. And so if you can think about the local populace, and they don't have to be in your zip code, they can actually be anywhere, but the local news station about the thing that you're most interested in, or like you are the most well-versed in, or the most passionate about. So then you can niche down, and that's why true crime podcasts perform really well. And Tucker Carlson has literally just passed Joe Rogan as far as the biggest podcaster of all, which is crazy. So there are these like niche interests, and the more you can get clear on what it is people are showing up for, A, and then B, assess your own podcast consumption. People like, as a consumer, like you don't think a lot about the content you're consuming, or like the process that, why did I pick this episode over this one? Or like, oh, Joe Rogan's had 5 comedians on in a row, and I kind of like, I want somebody interesting.
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
It's weird that you say that, because he's been the opposite lately. I'm like, give me a comedian, please. Put
Really?
Shane Gillis on here. Yeah.
Seriously, yeah, give me Kill Tony, like something, So like there's so much that you can learn from your own appetite. And I don't think people take enough time to go, why did that ad compel me to buy? Or why did that reel, why did I watch that all the way? Why is it that I subscribe to this podcast? And I listened to it from end to end. Well, they had a great guest. They had this content or the substrate of what they were talking about was very interesting to me. And so if you can find a very specific thing, provide real value, be entertaining to listen to, and then have an incredible guest or an incredible format and be consistent, those are like the main winning recipes for podcast growth. So what we're going to see, I think, is more money is going to come into the system. Joe Rogan made a renewal of his contract with Spotify. It's $250 million. And it's non-exclusive. In COVID, it was like 150, people speculate, and it was exclusive. You couldn't post on YouTube or anywhere else. Now they're like, this works so well. Non-exclusive, dude. Post wherever you want. Let's give you $250 million just to keep posting on Spotify. So those, like, they always say, follow the money. Where's the money going? Well, the money is moving around to all these incredible people with influence. He's the biggest podcaster in 93 countries. And he had to grind for 14 years pretty thanklessly. Yeah. And so, like, people are like, oh, I did it. I did 7 episodes. It didn't work, man. You got to go through it. You got to figure out what about you people like, what they don't like, and then what is it that you can provide to the world that no one's heard before?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember his early episodes in his living room on a couch with like a shitty microphone and them like doing mushrooms together and just talking about stupid shit.
Him and Brian Redband. Yeah, it's like the old days.
100%. Yeah, it's been cool to sort of see his journey. And again, like you said, it's just discipline. He's just doing it consistently for a long period of time. What do you think about X as a video platform? Because I know they're trying to sort of get into the video game and compete with YouTube a bit. Do you see any opportunity there, or you think it's too early?
I think X is amazing. My tendency is to get political, but like during COVID,
X is like a political platform.
That's it, right? Yeah. If it's literally that. During COVID, I don't feel like anybody trusted what was being distributed over the news networks, over CNN, MSNBC, even Fox at times. And I think people were like very frustrated that they could not get a talking head show interrupted by 6 commercials and all this crap. So the distribution of information has gotten so much more broad. I think X is amazing for that. I'll watch podcasts on X all the time. One of their compelling features is they kind of took what Clubhouse did. I don't know if you remember the Clubhouse. Yep. So now they have Spaces, like Twitter Spaces, right? And those work. Like
Cardone's doing it all the time. Who? I always see Cardone is hosting Spaces constantly.
Yeah, and Elon's hopping in on those, which is amazing. Like X as a video platform is phenomenal. You have to have a different strategy when you go into that because every different sport has different rules. If I go into basketball and I'm playing with soccer's rules, I'm not going to do well at basketball. And so X has a different set of rules. And Instagram has its own rules and YouTube has its own rules. Oh, what is content? Yeah, but they have different audiences, man. Like there are people that cannot eat dinner unless a YouTube video is on. It's so well known that it's a meme. And I'm not that guy, but that person exists in the tens of millions. And so it's like that person has a very different content appetite than someone on X. And so each one of them has rules. And so should you post for the sake of posting? Yeah. Why? Well, because you're getting the reps in. It's really not about the receiving end yet. Like you're not going to get a ton of growth by posting for the sake of posting, but you yourself will refine as a creator. Then over time, you've got through your white belt. You've learned, I hold my body this way. I have my weights on my back leg. I lean forward if I'm going to throw this. Like you're learning just the basics. And then when you get your yellow belt in X works this way, Instagram responds with this, YouTube wants me to do that. There's just levels to this game, in each platform, but X is an incredible tool. And I think everyone's going to keep going to it. It is actually the most used platform. They have their most viewership, their most active user base. It's the highest it's ever been.
Yeah.
Ever.
I believe that 100%. What do you think when it comes to short form content? Like, being honest with what we do, we'll take same content posted on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, everywhere, which I know probably isn't ideal since everyone's got
works. Everyone's doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you recommend doing that or if you're like, no, create individual content for each platform. But share it to all.
That's the purple belt move.
Yeah.
Okay. That's, white, yellow is like, I'm content syndication. So I made one piece and it was very efficient for a while, but then that got hacked. That got maximized and somebody figured out the master strat to that.
Sure.
So now you do, that game has been progressed. And it's interesting for us, like we've found a real opportunity as a company because full-on marketing agencies with these big old budgets are using strategies from like 2-3 years ago.
Sure.
And it's like, man, like they don't even know that. Like they're people are shelling out cash, like big companies, and the people that they're relying on, hey, you be our creative angle or our marketing or our social guys. They don't know that the people they're relying on for that role is using a strategy that's 3 years old. And that sounds bad, but if it's 6 months old, it's just as bad.
Sure.
If it's 3 months old, it's just as bad, which is crazy. So then it's like, wow, like to really get in that game, you have to understand the landscape and how fast it moves, man. It's really nuts. So syndicating one piece of content across all platforms is going to give you a lot of data, which is good.
Yeah.
But you have to go and study that data. And X has really good analytics. Instagram does. YouTube has amazing analytics.
Yeah, I agree.
Amazing. So if you're making inference from all of that, then yeah, like it's totally a great move. Then, you know, if you can build up, that's the thing. It's like you have to have almost content teams now to, like MrBeast has, I want to say like 15 people just for TikTok.
Damn.
And so it's like, hey, I can't compete with Beast. So then, you know, set your bar differently. I'm not going to compete with a team of 15 on just viral TikTok concepts. But what can you do at the scale that you're at? If it's all relative, where are you at? What can you do? What's your bandwidth? And then where do you think you most likely are going to excel the most at? Put it everywhere. Sure.
Yeah.
You know, if you have a video that pops, double click on that. Like, what was that? Like, why did you have this outlier moment? And what platform was it? And like, what did you learn? So yeah, it's a big learning game. Like this seems kind of like platitudes, but you have to start with the basics. Like everyone's at white belt.
Do you have any preference? I've heard multiple theories on staying strictly organic, boosting posts, putting spend behind certain videos. What's your take on that? Because I've also heard that sometimes putting spend kills growth organically. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
Pay to play, you know?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I sort of feel like for most platforms, but I've heard contradictory information.
It's like the drug dealer thing. Like, hey, first one's free, you know? And then you're hooked. So it's like Zuck, he wants you to pay.
Yep.
And on the other side of that is growth. So if you can allocate a percentage of your budget and say like, yeah, like I'll put spend behind this, do that knowing that you're probably not going to want to stop because you will get results. So it is very much like fast growth has been put behind a paywall. I remember like circa 2015, 2016, if you were just organically clever and consistent, you couldn't help but grow. Now they've figured out that growth, if you can put it behind a paywall, you create a multi-billion-dollar company. And so paying will help, but you don't want to stop doing it.
Do you usually post it organically first and see the reaction and then put money behind it if it's starting to catch on, or do you do it right out of the gate?
I think that's probably the best strategy, unless you're going into it as a well-versed content creator.
Okay.
Content is like, first off, I hate the word content. I hate it so much. I think it's the most dumb, dead, stupid word. And when we say it, we try and say story, because every single thing that you're doing is a story. And if you don't look at it in that way, I started the video, second 1, second 2. We would spend a week planning out the first 2 seconds of a video. A week. Just what is the word? What is the color? What's the lighting look like? What is the first sentence that people are going to hear? What's that shot look like? Because if you think about your experience when you land on a video, it starts at the beginning. It starts at second 1 and second 2. And so those moments, you're consciously deciding or unconsciously, hey, I'm not going to watch this anymore. So planning that out moment by moment, what is the experience of the cold viewer? Are you compelling them to stay longer or are you not? That understanding will shape how well your content performs. So then if you go into that deployment strategy and you have that in mind, then you could probably quickly put spend behind it. But a lot of people, it takes them a lot of beating their head against the wall to get to that point, you know? And that's how it feels. People are like, I've been making videos for years, man. Like I don't know why it's not working. And it's like, well, you have to, like Jimmy says this all the time, MrBeast. He's like, you have to make 100 bad videos to have your first kind of good one. And then when you hit 1,000, you've got 1,000 case studies to understand, here's why it didn't work, which is the most abysmal road ahead. You're like, I don't want to make 1,000 videos. Yeah. You know, I've made hundreds and hundreds of videos and I know what that took. So to tell somebody you're going to figure it out after 1,000 is like, that seems so bleak, but it's true. Like you will get the reps and the muscle memory and then you'll approach it very clear on what it is that people want.
Do you test the hooks in the first 2 seconds? Do you do like, will you film multiple, throw at the beginning of the video and just see what's getting the best reaction? Or do you feel like you just sort of have that knowledge now of like, oh, I know what's going to work?
I definitely test them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All the time.
Cool.
And we'll have like we'll have the meat of the video, and people are like, oh my gosh, once they get into that video, they're going to love it. They're going to buy. But it's like, dude, like you're assuming they're going to get past moment 5. You know, like if all the good stuff is like 2 minutes into your video, they don't know that. They're starting the video at the first second. And they're probably not going to get to it if the first second's not incredible, because you know why? Because there's level 9s out there and their first second rocks and their second is amazing. And by second 10, they're like, oh my gosh, I got to watch all this, you know? And so you have to look at it in that way. But we'll test hooks all the time because that appetite changes.
Sure.
Like let's take like the Hormozis, right? Like Alex Hormozi at the beginning of the year, and really like I would say the tail end of last year, there was this style, the Hormozi editing style, and Opus is largely like, that's kind of why I dunked on Opus, is it's kind of appropriated that style and automated it.
Sure.
It's like the guy and then like this colorful text with a solid behind the text and maybe a couple of emojis or whatever, and that's dead. That's dead and gone. No one should do that. But it worked for a while, and then everybody did it, and now it's gone. So hooks are the same way. Is that appetite, like what got somebody interested, that changes all the time, because if there's a surplus of people doing it over time, that's not a good hook, which is really, it's kind of a weird thing, but that's how fast it moves, man. It's really weird.
Yeah. I feel like you have to be creative to stay ahead, and you have to test constantly. And I think for a lot of people, it's just committing the time to actually going through the full process instead of just like throwing shit up there and hoping it sticks. Talk thumbnails. How important are thumbnails for video success?
Good question.
I heard MrBeast talking that it's like one of the most important things.
Yeah.
And I know he was talking about how he tests thumbnails like crazy to see what sticks. Any tips for thumbnails to get more clicks?
Well, thumbnail and title. So when we would plan videos, we would start with the thumbnail and the title.
Okay.
So like before you've ever gone out and do anything, you get into your own shoes as a consumer. If I saw this thumbnail and I saw this title, would I be able to ignore it? And if there's a chance, it's not like the most interesting thing, then it's probably not the best. So we would do all of our videos planning the title and thumbnail first. So like I had this idea, and it planted this. I'll claim this till the day I die. I told Jimmy one time, everybody comes up to Jimmy, oh my God, I had this video idea. And you're like, I don't care. I have a team of 20 people, they're video idea guys. Oh, I've got an idea. And you're like, I don't want to hear your idea. But I had this idea, and I was like, dude, we should rent a cruise ship. How bananas would that be? Who rents a cruise ship? And he like stopped in his tracks, because very rarely is a video idea good that he hasn't already thought of or his team hasn't. And he was like a whole cruise ship. I was like, yeah, that's like our scale. That's how we operate. Like, who does that? Over time, that video became a $1 boat versus $500 million boat. So that's the ultimate. I wasn't even on that video, but like the inception of the idea was like, oh, we should rent a cruise ship, right? So with thumbnails, like what's the visual? Oh, me standing in front of a ship. I rented this for all my friends. Like, that's really interesting, because if you as a consumer are on YouTube and over on the right side is the recommended column, right? Mm-hmm. That's ranked. It's very specific. The topmost one, YouTube is convinced that's the most interesting thing to you. And the second one and the third one in that order.
Sure.
So what is your title? And what is your thumbnail? And bright colors work really well. Dark thumbnails don't perform, right? These are like kind of obvious things you can go see on blogs. But people think that a thumbnail is an opportunity to like have their brand established. So they'll put like their logo or they'll put their face in it. And unless you have a super recognizable face, you're wasting thumbnail real estate. If I love Jordan Peterson, and he's a little cranky now, he used to be super awesome, right? But but if I see a Jordan Peterson face in a thumbnail, I instantly recognize that face, so I have a higher probability of clicking on it. If I put my face and I'm talking about Jordan Peterson in this video, people aren't going to know my face, but the content is Jordan Peterson. So if I put his face in there, there's a higher chance of click through. So thumbnails like mission critical, because that is the cold viewer's decision moment. They're going, I'm either going to click on this thumbnail, this video, and open it up for a surprise, and hopefully I'm not disappointed, or I'm just going to skip it and go to a real one, like a better one that fits me better. So that thumbnail, you shouldn't put your logo in it. You shouldn't try and like have the same style every time. People do that in podcasts.
Yeah.
You know, like Lex Friedman will have, it's a black background with him, and then maybe the guest will change, or Joe Rogan does that. They're in a league of their own. That's a different game. Podcasts, like the thumbnails are not as critical. I'm not going to decide a podcast listen session based on the thumbnail.
Sure.
On a YouTube video, I definitely will. So it's really worth consideration.
What's some common mistakes you see with titles?
Too long, you know. A lot of them are too long, or they try and jam all this. You know what the biggest one is? They put the same thing in the title that's already in the thumbnail, or they'll put the same text in the thumbnail that's in the title. It's like, how I make $1 million is the title, and then that same thing is in the thumbnail. It's, why are you doing that? It's very clear. I saw it in the title. Like, give me a second. Your best thing is like, hook one, please click on my video, is how good is your title? And then I go to the thumbnail and I go, that's a pretty good title. Don't put the same thing there. Make it totally different. What's another element to the video that I might open up, you know?
Do you recommend text on the thumbnail or just imagery, or it depends?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, my answers feel like very subjective, but yeah, it depends is really like the best answer. If there's too much, first off, think about the different sizes of thumbnails on different viewing platforms. So if you're on a desktop, if you're on a laptop, your thumbnail size is going to be larger than if it is on a phone. And very rarely do people watch. There's some people that watch YouTube on like their televisions, but for the most part, I'd say 90% of viewership is done through the phone.
Yep.
The size of the thumbnail, it plays a big factor into it. And so if you're putting a bunch of text and you're in Canva and you're like, oh my God, like I can put all this text here. And it's like, yeah, that looks huge when you're designing it. But then when you're actually deploying it, when somebody's receiving your video for the first time in the woods, it's very small. So if there's like one or two really good words that you compare and they're bold and very pronounced, that might work, you know, but it really is dependent on the video itself.
No, that's great information. I know probably Lee and I are talking on the way home about how to re-strategize what we're doing on a daily basis. Who are some people that you're following right now and just like really impressed with what they're doing online? I know you mentioned like Hermosi's, and obviously I think everyone's been watching them. Anyone else that you're really paying close attention to?
The All In podcast.
The All In podcast. I have not seen that yet.
It is an absolute anomaly. I'm fascinated with this show. So it's for billionaires.
Oh, I know what podcast you're talking about.
Yeah.
They're like always on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, well, that's not great production value. Like, why? Like, it's a freaking Zoom call. Okay. But if you're at a coffee shop and at the table across from you is 4 billionaires and they're talking about the war in Ukraine, and they're talking about market movements, and they're talking about the Trump assassination attempt, and you're like, okay, I have my perspective on it. Those guys are worth billions of dollars. They are way smarter than you. Would you like to hear their take on it? That's a phenomenal angle on a show. Like, and for that reason, I'm like, man, like everything that I approach in as being a business owner now, a content creator, I would like to cross-examine it with MrBeast, who I know very well, and a bunch of billionaires over there, and Lex Friedman, who's this Russian guy who's like an AI PhD genius. Like, I am so interested in being able to take my opinion and push it through the lens of other people that have a vastly different life experience than I do. Because then I get more data about like how I approach life and how I approach business. And so the All In podcast is incredible. And some of those episodes, like, they'll spend a long time on one really obvious subject, like the attempt on Donald Trump's life. But then some weeks it's specifically about markets and the Magnificent Seven. And I didn't know what the Mag 7 was. And I had to go and look into it. What is that? Oh, it's it's Amazon and Meta. And oh, okay, cool. So now I have new verbiage. So the people at the highest level that are making billions of dollars, which is where I'm chartering towards. I'm going to be that one day. How are they looking at things? So they'll use a lot of business jargon. And the tendency is to be like, I don't know what they're saying. And so do I tune it out or do I learn? And so anytime I can do that, like, that's a good show for me. So 4 guys with a very unique angle in life, putting a show on is a fascinating thing to watch. Some people are just sitting on top of gold and they don't even realize it. They themselves are the gold. Like, you have this ability to bring hundreds of business owners together, sit them down and then say, here are all the different ways you can approach growing your karate studios and your ventures. Like, you have an amazing ability to do that. So you're sitting on gold. So now you've just you're kind of fine tuning it, right? And like figuring out why did everybody get in the room? Like, what is it about you that brought everybody together? There's something there. And I can't find it. I mean, I can't, but
Yeah, I don't know what it is either.
that's
we'll
kind of
figure it out.
that's kind of my job. But
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, everybody has that, and shows like that are they're incredible to watch. And that one's grown meteorically.
Yeah, I've seen the like shorts popping up pretty frequently of that. I didn't know it was all in podcasts, but I've watched a few of those clips.
Yeah.
Non-content related question or story related question. What do you think in your career has been the most challenging thing you've had to overcome?
Oh man, my belief in myself. I grew up in a military family. My dad got injured, and he was one of the pre-FDA trials for OxyContin, and so he was in a lot of pain. And I didn't know that until years and years later. And so like because of that, he wasn't able to work. So we were on food stamps. I grew up in a way that would lead me to believe that I was not meant for much. And so owning that and saying I deserve success, I deserve love, I deserve happiness, not because of anything that I've done, but simply for the fact that I have accepted that I deserve it. And accepting that has taken a long time. Because if I come from this phenomenal pedigree and I have all of these things in my rear view and, like I have all of these attributes that I can latch my self-worth onto and be like, this is why I deserve all of these things because of my parents or because of this factor or whatever. Accepting that I deserve success and love and happiness has taken a long time to break through. But everybody does.
Yeah.
For the simple fact that you exist. If you're going to exist, which you do, you can either operate through life thinking that you don't deserve anything, or you can just flip the exact same switch and say, I deserve everything. And people go, well, really? Who are you? Do I have to have an answer to that?
Yeah.
Just accept that. And over time, you'll be the white belt at accepting that. And then you'll be the yellow belt, and that just happens with time.
Yeah. I love that answer. I love how real it is. And I think goes back to imposter syndrome for a lot of people too, where they're just like,
real.
Like I've dealt with that like my whole life, where I'll have moments where I'm like, yes, this is awesome, I'm kicking ass, and the other moments are like, am I supposed to be like doing this well? Am I supposed to be receiving this? Is this meant for me? So I completely resonate with that. I also like to ask my guests, what's a book that's changed your life?
Steve Jobs' autobiography, or the biography about him. I can't remember what it was called, but I got paid $500 to read it. Which is crazy, but like while I was at MrBeast, the executive team, he challenged all of us. Like for context, I had to live in his house for about 2 months. So imagine having MrBeast as a roommate. But because of COVID, me and the other core members of the team, we didn't know like if you get this virus, like do your eyes pop out? We didn't know. You remember that early 2020, everyone was just scared. Like what is this?
Die.
Those videos were coming out of China, like bodies being scraped off the streets, which was totally a psyop, by the way. But like, because of that, we didn't know what to do. So Jimmy just said, okay, all my core people, you're living in my house right now. So I can make sure that you're not going to get infected. So it was great. I had like coffee delivered to me in the morning and food and all that. But he challenged all of us to read this book about Steve Jobs. And he said, if you read it and you can prove it and take a test, I'll pay you $500. I was like, well, that's an easy incentive. But that book like was so eye-opening because Steve Jobs was up against Bill Gates. And Microsoft is dominant. Every single shop, every single company, computers, like by and large, that was Microsoft, Yeah. But it's like a clunky ass machine. It's not aesthetic. It doesn't feel like it was made for humans. And in the 90s, that seemed kind of like a novel observation, but also like big deal. But then creating a device that feels like it was made for humans turned Apple into Apple. So then the thought process that goes into that, what do you understand about people and how they think and how they resonate with technology? This new thing we haven't had before. Is it this ugly, beige, boxy piece of shit? Or is it like this beautiful, custom, like curved thing that has like some humanness to it, like a beautiful thing? He would pour into the product and obsess over the smallest things. The other thing I learned from that book, which gave me like really good insight, but also like frustrated me, but I'm glad I understood it, is how Jimmy thought. And Steve Jobs has, everybody around him would say, he has this reality distortion where something doesn't exist, there's no way it can exist, and he will simply insist on it existing. and force everyone else to accept that it's going to exist. And the story they told was Steve went to, I don't know if it was Intel, maybe it was Microsoft, and this is in the 90s. And so they're giving him a demo of like, here's this cool computer we're developing, whatever. And I think on Windows machines, it's like just your files, right? So on Apple, it's Finder. So he saw that they had files like pulled up on the screen on the desktop, and he saw that they had a second window of files and that they overlapped. So they grabbed one and it stacked behind each other. And he was like, we can't do that. In the 90s, they're like, how do you create the compute to have two static objects existing in the same? I've never seen that before. So he goes back to Apple and his developers and he says, why the hell aren't we doing that? I want to have two different Finder windows overlap on top of each other. And at the time, the way that the system architecture was designed, it couldn't do that. And so he insisted on it. He said, it has to be done. It has to be. So they spent months on just this one thing so that multiple windows could overlap on top of each other on your desktop. Come to find out, Microsoft actually didn't do that. He went there and thought he saw that, but they didn't have that.
Interesting.
So it literally didn't exist, and he forced it into reality. So that was helpful for me to understand that this reality distortion field is a superpower that Jimmy had. We'd build a set, he'd walk in and be like, this is shit. It needs to be 10 times bigger. I'm like, great, tremendous. I have to 10x this in a day. But that thought process will lead to incredible outcomes. So if you can distort reality around you, force outcomes that aren't there, and just insist on it long enough, odds are something really good will happen.
Going back to sort of what makes Jimmy so successful, obviously it sounds like vision is a big part of that, where he can just see how something's going to be and not accept anything less. What else behind the scenes did you notice with him that was like just different, that sort of separated him from everyone else?
He wouldn't talk about anything that wasn't YouTube. Like he rented nothing. He wouldn't talk about anything that wasn't YouTube. And if you would try and have a conversation that was not about YouTube, you were bumped down a rank in his mind. And you could see that very quickly. Anything that deviated from the path forward was a problem. And so like if people really get to know him, they're like, oh, he's not a nice guy. No, he's focused. He's super focused. And like Steve Jobs would get a kick out of like getting in the elevator with somebody he was about to fire, and then he would fire them. Like not a nice guy, but super focused. And Jimmy's the opposite of that because he's actually really kind, and he does stuff behind the scenes that people will never know. I don't even know if I should share this story, but one of my best friends is the head of MrBeast Philanthropy. Okay. And he, so it's their whole philanthropic arm. There was a tornado that hit in like Georgia. This is 2021. And this family had been displaced. It was like a mom and like 7 kids, like 2 houses next to each other. Like both families had just lost their homes. And for whatever reason, this had come across the desk of my friend that runs Beast Philanthropy. And so he mentioned it to Jimmy. And so Jimmy said, no cameras, nothing else, but here's a check, and just solved it.
Oh, wow.
So things
That's
like,
awesome. He
does stuff like that all the time, And so those sorts of things are just, so he's very focused, and he's also like charity is a core component of who he is.
Love that. Last question, just for my selfish reasons. What's one conspiracy theory that you believe in?
Oh my gosh, dude! It's gosh, you know me so well already.
Well, I go down those rabbit holes all the time, even if I don't fully believe it. Just the interesting elements of it.
So I found out on my birthday last year, because it was outside of a 30-year window of classification, that my dad was in CIA for a while.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Imagine finding that out. That's why I was born in Germany, is because we're
not going to get shot for saying this, right?
it's outside of the classification window. We're good.
All right.
So we were there monitoring the collapse of how the Soviet Union, as it was falling apart, how it was going to affect East Germany.
Oh, wow.
So my dad has a piece of the Berlin Wall, which came down in '89.
That's crazy.
So finding out that was why we were there. That's why I was born in Frankfurt. I've been raised to pick at the seams of reality, pull a thread and keep going, and to also not really accept the conventional framework of here's how the world works and here's how America works and da-da-da. It's like that is a picture, that's a comic book. It's this theater, it's a show, it's people. It's all run by people, and people are profit motivated, and they have their own outcomes. And so it's like, I don't know if there's a smoky room with dudes in black cloaks planning out maybe that exists. I don't know. But for the most part, it's like things are so wildly different from what we actually perceive them to be. So one I think is very interesting is laser technology and directed energy weapons. I find that very
Blue roofs.
Yeah. You know, the more you start understanding physics and light, the more you have to kind of cross-examine everything else. Maui is a really weird example.
Yeah, that was strange.
That was really odd. My thought on that is, my guess is that it was hacked. I think that for one, Sibers, we have this robust satellite array that orbits the planet, and they have this super sophisticated infrared display. I think Boeing or Lockheed Martin created it. Anyways, we have all these satellites that orbit the planet, and the whole planet is under 24-hour film surveillance. That's a real thing. Anybody can Google that.
Yeah.
And so it's like, my thought is maybe a rival nation hacked one of our weapon systems, and to just show that they could do it, they turned on the thing for a little bit.
Let's add another layer to that. I read today BlackRock owns 66,000 acres in Maui. And then
kidding.
Another 33,000 is owned by the U.S. government. So it's like, what else is there?
Yeah, BlackRock owns like 50% of Ukraine now.
That's not surprising.
In fact, there was an article that came out. BlackRock requested to the Ukrainian military that they stop burying soldiers that have been killed in the line of fire on this segment of land that BlackRock owns. They're like, don't bury that. We own that land now. Kid you not.
Didn't they own the servers that just went down recently too in Ukraine?
Oh,
was that BlackRock?
The servers?
Yeah.
I didn't hear about that.
Remember how
CrowdStrike?
Everyone thought it was like Microsoft only at first, and it turned out to be way bigger.
Really?
Supposedly the servers in Ukraine are owned by BlackRock. I could talk conspiracy theories all day.
Oh, this is where the show should go. A really good friend of ours. It's amazing. I have the coolest partners. I'm so blessed to like meet the people I get to meet. I feel like I've consistently met incredible people my whole life, and they keep finding me. I don't know why. One of them's name is David Morehouse. He is a remote viewing expert. He worked for CIA and DIA for a number of years and was involved in teaching the agencies how to do remote viewing for intelligence collection. So I get to work with this guy all the time. And he said that we've done a lot of podcasts with him. He told me about this one thing that blew my mind, and it's allowed me to then set a better reference point for all of the other incredible black budget, black project things that are happening. And he said, we have soldiers in orbit right now. And their job, picture it, put SEAL Team 6 inside a shuttle. And let's say that a crisis breaks out in Serbia. It is more efficient to let the planet spin underneath you and then drop the soldiers down than to get on a plane and travel the span of the planet to get to the location. From a logistics standpoint, it's much faster to let the planet spin underneath you. So there are soldiers that are in orbit in these vessels, like just waiting. And then they get called down and they land. There's a video game that I'm obsessed with called Helldivers. And it's exactly that. Like, you're in a big spaceship and you pick a planet and you're shot down in this bullet capsule and you land and you mess up bugs. It's super fun. That's a real thing. So it's like, as a baseline, like we were dealing with nuclear weapons in the 40s and we're still talking about nuclear weapons. Is there a single thing from the 40s that is still talked about today? Like that technology, infrastructure, what? There's nothing, but we're still like rambling on about nuclear weapon, which is a big deal. Yeah. And comparatively, like those bombs versus like fusion bombs, they're now 50 times the payload, way more than that. But I think it's so interesting that we are spellbound in these narratives that have been running for 80, 90 years to keep your eye off the ball, which is Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, which is their secret division of weapon development, said in the 90s, we have things that have anything you see in Star Wars, we've done it. We can create it, but it would take an act of God to pull it out of its black budget compartmentalization. And it was in the 90s, man.
That's crazy.
So
we got lightsabers though. That's awesome.
We have lightsabers. We do. Yeah. I could go down this all day. This is what I obsess over.
No, I appreciate you jumping down the rabbit hole with me and having some fun at the end. But hey, thank you for all of your knowledge and sharing all this information with our audience. We're super excited to have you at the summit. I know you're going to kill it and have a great presentation. So just, thank you for giving back to our industry.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited. Everybody come in October. It's going to be fun.
Yes, agreed. Tickets, relentlesssummit.com.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you, Adam. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
We're unstoppable. To the top, we about to go. That CEO, I need to know the impact we about to grow. Competition comical. Straight A1, we on the road. Money focus for the goal. Tell them what they need to know. We unstoppable.